The next pandemic is right around the corner, and it's going to make COVID look like a hay fever by comparison. Not because of the disease itself, but because we as a society have already been infected with something far worse, a complete breakdown of institutional trust. We do not trust our government, we do not trust our medical establishment, and we sure as shit do not trust each other. Which means our ability to respond to a collective crisis, our immune system as a society, if you will, has already been compromised. And this weakness will be taken advantage of by something, be it natural forces or unnatural forces. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. A study by the Brownstone Institute found that Americans who trust their physicians and hospitals dropped from 71% in April 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic to just 40% by early 2024. And as of May 2024, the Pew Research Center reported that only 22% of Americans said that they trust the U.S. government at least most of the time, one of the lowest figures in nearly 70 years. Now, I'm not going to get into whether I think this lack of institutional trust is justified. Obviously, I have my opinions about that, but it's not really germane to the point that I'm trying to make here. The point is, these arbiters of truth, these experts that we trusted so much in the past to guide us through national crises, have fallen from grace. And as a consequence of this, our collective sense-making apparatus, our ability to come to a shared understanding of reality, is fundamentally broken, maybe even broken beyond repair. The internet and social media have replaced these arbiters of truth and have allowed every individual to subscribe to their own curated version of reality. And if we're all reading different books, it's really hard to be part of the same book club, which really fucking matters if the book we all need to read is How to Not Die from the Next Bubonic Plague. If something like COVID were to happen again today, regardless of where it came from or how dangerous it was, we would handle it with even less national cohesion and unity than we did last time. And that bar was already extremely low. Even assuming that our government and medical establishment acted in good faith and with our best interest in mind, and even if they did present viable solutions or cures or preventative measures free of any perverse financial incentives, our ability to coordinate a national response would be effectively non-existent. Many people would not believe anything about anything until they started seeing people drop dead with their own eyes. And maybe not even then, but at that point it would be way too late to do anything about it anyway. Imagine if you got sick and rather than fighting the virus, half of your white blood cells started fighting the other half. That's basically what we're talking about here. And you know what's especially terrifying to me is that I am not the only person who has figured this out. I'm not that smart. There is a self-destruct button sitting in the center console of our society that is the size of a fucking barn, and it is blinking bright red and just waiting and begging for somebody to push it. But who would do such a thing? Well, I'm glad you asked, hypothetical internet stranger. I'm imagining three possible scenarios here. First, the most obvious and perhaps the most dangerous, and the one that requires absolutely no conspiratorial thinking whatsoever, would be a naturally occurring zoonotic origin virus, as infectious as COVID, but many times as lethal. In that situation, we would see massive devastation of life, like double-digit percentages of the American population dead. And unfortunately, there's not really much to do about something like that except to try to reestablish institutional trust, but I don't see how that could possibly happen at this point. And the really messed up thing is that probabilistically speaking, this one is going to happen eventually. Just viruses evolve over time. That's just the thing that happens. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when, and whether or not we can get our collective shit together in time. The second scenario would be a foreign government developing a virus as a bioweapon. I'm honestly surprised that this one hasn't happened already, because again, I'm not that smart and I can see that this is a massive weakness in our national security. You think Russia isn't aware of this? Or Iran? Or China? If we were to play this out game theory-wise, a foreign actor could develop a virus and also develop a cure for that virus and inoculate themselves and their allies before releasing it, which would effectively remove any disincentives at all, especially for, say, a religious fundamentalist dictatorship with doomsday aspirations. And I'm not an expert on this, but I would bet that it would be a lot easier and cheaper to develop a virus like this than it would be to develop, say, a nuclear bomb. And much easier to deploy it from within the borders of an enemy nation without being detected. And then there's the third scenario, the one that I'm actually kind of rooting for, unfortunately. Let me just start by pointing out that regardless of what you think of the COVID vaccines or how effective or ineffective they were or how they were rolled out, one thing is undeniable. They were obscenely profitable. $90 billion in profits. not revenue, profits, which is what I would refer to as an incredibly strong, perverse financial incentive for something like COVID to happen again. Now, dear viewer, I know that you and I would never secretly develop a virus and then release it into the general population, and then turn around and sell that same population the cure to that virus to the tune of $100 billion. But then again, that's probably because you and I are not psychopaths. A psychopath would absolutely do that. Like, I'll never understand why people on the left are perfectly willing to believe that, say, the petroleum industry is willing to cause the extinction of the entire human species through climate change for profit, but a pharmaceutical CEO wouldn't create a non-lethal virus for the purpose of making $100 billion by selling the cure. Really? Why not? Like, have we all forgotten about the opioid epidemic? Were you there for that, or was it just me? Did I fever dream that whole thing? If a psychopath pharmaceutical CEO had a button in front of them that would allow them to recreate the conditions for COVID and generate $100 billion in profits with no consequences, why would they not do that? I think, again, the silver lining of this is that of the three scenarios that I've laid out, this one would probably be the least harmful in terms of loss of life. Because as any drug dealer will tell you, it's way more profitable to have a living customer than a dead one. That's just drug dealing economics 101. So if profit motives are the main incentive for the next pandemic, we're most likely to see a virus that is extremely contagious, with moderate to severe symptoms but low overall fatality. You want people just sick enough and with just enough people dying to really motivate them to seek out a really expensive, taxpayer-subsidized treatment. And you would probably want that treatment to be ongoing with frequent updates necessary to maximize efficacy so that you can sell as many doses as possible. And if that scenario reminds you of anything, well, then you're probably a conspiracy theorist. In conclusion, I'm putting my money on there being another pandemic within the next 5 years. And I know this sounds messed up, but I'm kind of hoping that it's motivated by corporate greed, because if, as bad as that would be, it would still be better than a foreign bioweapon and probably better than a naturally occurring zoonotic origin virus. But regardless of how it comes about, due to the complete breakdown in institutional trust, our collective response to whatever happens is going to be catastrophically bad. People are going to die that didn't have to die. And again, I wish that there were a good solution to this problem, but short of eliminating profit motives from medicine and government, I just don't know what that would be. You remember that research that I cited at the beginning of the video, where Americans' trust in the medical establishment dropped from 70% to 40% during the pandemic? The number one reason that people gave for their distrust was the perceived financial motives of the medical industry taking priority over patient care and outcomes. $90 billion in profits. Anyway, sorry to end it on such a bleak note. I wish I had a viable solution, but I haven't quite solved the psychopath problem here, which is the actual issue. So we'll just file this under the category of, I really hope I'm wrong, but I guess we'll find out.